Hello and welcome. My name is Michelle Villagomez. I'm the head of marketing at Engin. Thank you so much for tuning in to the first episode in Engin's Smarter Staffing webinar series. AI advancements are moving what seems to be at the speed of light, and this ongoing series aims to keep the recruiting world informed and ready to tackle the changes that are sure to come with these advancements. We are really so excited that you could join us today. A little bit of background to kick us off here, some background on Engin. Engin is a full service recruitment technology agency combining cutting edge automation, marketing strategies, and deep industry expertise. We've helped almost 500,000 people apply to jobs in various industries across thousands of different job openings. And today we are joined by our very own Sloane Barbour and Classet's Johnny Rooney. A little bit of background on these gentlemen. Sloane is the founder and CEO of Engin, a recruitment marketing and automation platform helping staffing firms scale with modern AI. With over 15 years of experience in recruiting, including 12 years leading staffing agencies like Motion Recruitment Partners and at tech platforms like Hire.com, Sloane bridges the human side of recruiting with cutting edge technology. He's passionate about building tools that put people first, especially at a time when, as mentioned, AI is reshaping the future of work. And Johnny, he's the head of partnerships at Classet. He's dedicated to helping teams build the most efficient hiring funnels in the industry with a passion for developing recruiting technologies that enhance the candidate experience. He focuses on optimizing hiring processes through innovation. And before I hand it off to these guys, just a bit of housekeeping. Today's webinar is being recorded. You'll be able to rewatch it again and again, along with our other webinars on our YouTube channel. So post-webinar, look out for that link so you can watch that. And don't hesitate to share ideas or questions, as they come. Chime in the chat and in the Q&A. We'll take those as the conversation permits. But otherwise, I'm going to hand it off to Sloane and Johnny, and they will take it away.
Michelle, absolutely pro level. Thank you so much for the kickoff. Really appreciate you and all the kind words. Johnny, good to see you.
Great to see you, Sloan.
So we're going to jump right into it. Both you and I have a extensive background in the staffing industry. We've now moved over more to the pure play sort of tech side of things, supporting staffing firms. Blue Crew, which is probably fairly well known amongst folks in the skilled trades, manufacturing, and industrial staffing. What'd you learn there that helped inform what you're doing at Classet on the AI side?
Yeah, great question. So ever since the start of Blue Crew, our team was super passionate about creating technology that allowed candidates to more flexibly find roles, but also find roles quicker. There is a long and drawn out process with getting into roles these days, and it often leads to candidates being ghosted, candidates not hearing back from clients. So we always had a strong passion for building tools to get people into jobs as quickly as possible. And what we realized is, over the last 10 years, it's gotten better, but there haven't been really many upgrades to that process. It's super manually driven through recruiting and through outreach. So really what we learned in that space is within light industrial and these high volume areas specifically, there's a need for upgrades in technology. But what we're learning more and more these days is really throughout every type of role, every type of position you're hiring for, there's technology out there that can allow your team to operate more efficiently and allow candidates to just have a better experience on the front end.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit overwhelming for myself, having immersed myself in sort of this AI for recruiting, modern AI, large language models, et cetera, over the last, call it 18 to 24 months, as we've seen this particular breed of technology come to the forefront. Some of the things that you're doing, which we've been very impressed with, and obviously we collaborate, build on top of your system for certain customers, but it really seems like even 12, 18 months ago, none of this was even possible. AI voice screening, and to your point, in a staffing firm, in a high volume hiring environment, one of the biggest, if not the biggest bottlenecks that was effectively unsolved by technology was the phone screen. And when I was running firms doing more high volume or RPO, it was 15, 20, 25 phone screens to get someone through, submit and into a placement. And obviously that means you're wasting sort of 95% of your time on folks that never end up getting hired. So how do you look at this problem, and how do you look at this new technology capability in solving it?
Yeah, so you'd mentioned, 2, 3, 4 years ago, I think everyone has had the experience of calling in and to a customer service, maybe talking to a robot, and not having the greatest experience, asking to bypass it, speak with the representative. You had mentioned with the advancements of the language models, the text to voice, all of that has really unlocked a new way to upgrade these systems, allow the voices to become as conversational as possible. So what we look to do is just make that candidate experience feel as real as possible. With they're talking to a bot, but it's actually feels like a recruiter, and doesn't kind of sacrifice that feeling. I think a lot of agencies and hiring in general, you feel like there's this huge need to have that relationship at the first moment of the funnel, which is post-application engaging. What we're seeing is that candidates far prefer speed in which they're getting into a role, and just the scale of the ability to do that with the use of voice AI and all the improvements has led to a lot of efficiency gains.
Speed matters, right? And speed, especially if you're working VMS accounts, you're doing a lot of submits, you have a specific KPI you're trying to hit. However, at the same time, there's downsides to this potentially, right? And I think, there's sort of the dystopia, the robots take all of our jobs, but then there's also the upside to it, which is in our work together, we realize 50, 60% of job seekers that have taken these calls after hours, right? So they can still learn about the company. And you're right, it's not a one-way thing where you're just hammering them with questions. The job seeker is able to ask questions to the agent as well as they will a recruiter. So how do you kind of see this sort of like playing out in terms of adoption on both the recruiter side and the job seeker side?
Yeah, so on the job seeker side, I'll start there. We can talk about speed all day. It was our initial hesitation and a hesitation of our customers of just kind of gathering feedback. Are people going to want to go through this process versus the human screener? As the technology has gotten better, we've seen conversions of that just continue to increase. So I actually think it's going to become a super normal part of the job seeking experience in the next couple of years. At some point, you're talking with an AI screener. On the client side of that, we like to think about it. There's so many processes within a day-to-day operation, from a recruiter, from screening resumes to chasing down candidates, getting them on the phone. And a lot of these are highly repeatable and more menial tasks. So the more that companies can unlock these things with the utilization of AI, and the more that they are doing that, they're seeing that their team can spend more time on more strategic and kind of higher ROI activity, and in turn getting more candidates placed.
Sure. I think that's what matters. When I was running staffing teams, the North Star was placements per rep, right? Your productivity per recruiter. And, you look at some of the numbers on these AI voice agents. For some members of my team, it was 60 to 70% of their day was phone screens. So, if you think about that, one, I think, again, I always look at this from the perspective of the existing recruiting team and adoption, and making sure that this is a technology that can be embraced and as a partner to humans, not as a replacement. Very sort of sensitive to that, as I think we all should be in the staffing industry, because we want lots and lots and lots of job demand, because that's what drives our businesses forward, and that's what all recruiters need. People are hiring, recruiters will be fine. So what do you think is like hype and versus doom? Like where are we in this sort of paradigm, this pendulum back and forth? Like, what's really, there's a lot of hype, sure. I think there's also a lot of doom. Where do you think the reality is in recruiting and staffing?
Yeah, I think you had mentioned the point on the 60 to 70% doing phone screenings, and there's a lot of good tools even at other pieces, mainly top of the funnel, that can help manage volume of applicants. So I do think is pretty true ROI out there on some of the AI screening tools that you can use. Where I think some of the doom comes in, and some stuff that's maybe a little bit too much of hype, is the fact that people think that AI is going to completely take a recruiter's job. There's so much in a recruiter's day-to-day, whether it's building that relationship with the then qualified candidate or working with customers, growing those relationships, that still needs to be in place. I look at AI as a tool for recruiters to just partner with to allow them to spend more time in those areas.
There's nothing that's going to replace what I would say is the when you identify a hot candidate and then you want to move them through, that's when the relationship really can start to begin on both sides, and people can actually invest in that relationship. I do think it's interesting because what you're saying is, I think, a truth everyone in recruiting knows. If 80 or 90% of the people you talk to are never gonna, you'll probably never talk to them again. Because they're just, timing doesn't work. They're not right for the job. It's not a good fit for them. It's not a good fit for you. So the idea would be, hey, instead of maybe 80%, how can we get that down to 20%? And I think that's an exciting thing. I mean, it's a paradigm shift. It's a multiple of productivity and efficiency. But what are the downsides to that? Does that mean that we have, every day and every week you're getting bombarded with AI phone screener calls that constantly, nonstop? Like, where do you see this going?
Yeah, there needs to be some, gauge on that. And I think more and more, and we talked about this the other day, you're seeing the candidates adopt AI tools as well. So, the 50 applicants you might get for a normal job description is turning into 100 that's filled with noise. So it's hard to tell right now kind of where this exactly is going to go, but there does need to be some guardrails in place. You had mentioned identifying a hot candidate is one of the things you just said. Our goal with Classet and the phone screenings is really for recruiters to be able to identify that hot candidate quicker than they would be prior. If you get 100 applications, there might be 7 of them that are really, really hot candidates. If you even spend one day and delay reaching out to that candidate, you might then reach out to them. So I think a lot of, and I know Engin's doing some great work with this, but it's a symptom of a lot of the way these job applications are set up, where candidates can go and put in an application, put in 10 in a matter of 10 minutes. There, in my opinion, needs to be a better way to surface people initially, where then an AI screener can come into place and then run that next step in the process.
Yeah. And obviously, being that we focus a lot on the top of the funnel and partnering with, all the major job boards and improving that flow for quality. It's a lot of noise. It's been getting worse. And it doesn't benefit anyone. The one-click apply, I think, is one of those inventions you wish you can kind of uninvent, because, no one wants to apply to 100 jobs. And if the notion is it takes too long to fill out an application because you never hear back, well, if you apply to 100 jobs and also never hear back, or you hear back from the ones you're not interested, or you can't remember where you applied, I think that's an equally problematic situation. I do think AI agents are going to be a big piece of this. How do you view it, when you look at the future state? How do you think the role of a recruiter will truly evolve? You mentioned doing more high-value tasks, but if you were to look ahead 3 years, how is a human recruiter and an AI recruiter going to work together?
Yeah, so I really think that recruiters are going to turn into more of talent advisors or talent consultants, just kind of utilizing those terms, almost more of kind of like a sales type position, and kind of fuel and have data fueled by AI automating a lot of those tasks for them. So we had mentioned it, but building a relationship with the candidates, that's never going to fall off if you're going to want to really hire the best people. In agencies specifically, I think what it will allow recruiters to do is work more on the client side, as they're having a lot of these tasks automated in the background, working with clients to identify, be that consultant for them, potentially grow business. There's a lot of things going back to the kind of higher strategy part of a recruiter's role that I think AI will unlock just by solely automating and then providing better data on these candidates.
And how do you think the flip side is going to work? Do you think that the job seekers are going to have their own sovereign career agents that are supporting them, and there's going to be agent to agent communication, negotiating all of the nuances and minutia to arrive at the perfect fit?
It's a really interesting thing to think about, because as frustrating it is as a business to see the applications stack up and have to go through everyone to find that hot candidate. It is just as frustrating, if not more frustrating, on the candidate side, putting in applications and going into this black hole and not hearing back from a business. So we've had this conversation a couple times, but if you think about the actors or the pro athletes of the world, they all have these agents that are doing the negotiations for them, and matching them to the right positions, the right roles, whatever it might be. I do see a world where AI can, also do that, where it is potentially helping candidates at all level find the right fits with them and kind of allowing them to move kind of further down the process.
Yeah, I think it's going to be incredibly interesting, and I think there's definitely going to be sovereign AI on both sides, looking out for the business, looking out for the recruiter, and I think it's actually going to empower a lot of job seekers who might have previously been taken advantage of. I think it's going to require staffing firms and employers to step up in terms of their approach as well, and that's why I think like AI is not a thing; it's everything in a sense. It's like just like having desktop computers, like on everyone's desk at some point eventually happened. Having AI on everyone's desk is going to eventually happen. So it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. And I found working in staffing firms and working with many staffing clients, they have a technology stack that isn't what I would call ultra modern all the time. And so there's a lot of data in different places, and we're working with the customer together where supporting and making sure that everything can communicate effectively. What do you feel are like the one or two big hurdles that, in your view, most staffing firms have to really jump in the next quarter or two to be an AI first firm in 2026 and be able to actually compete and win?
Yeah, so there are some firms that have these disparate systems, and it is difficult in ways to get your job board talking with your screening team, talking with the actual placements that are going on, and have your customer have visibility into that. So ultimately, having that all under one roof is definitely going to help. I also just think that teams need to get over the hump of just AI in general. There is some skepticism around the impacts it's going to have on the internal team, have on the candidate, everything in between. So kind of looking at tools that you could pack in together and kind of leverage together, similar to what kind of Classet and Engin are doing, are going to therefore allow companies to take these disparate systems and allow them to act a lot more fluidly to get candidates placed.
Absolutely. I'm wondering if you were running a staffing firm today, Blue Crew, you're still doing something like that. What jobs are you going after in the next 5 years? Like what industries are going to be, because there's going to be crazy churn in the job market, which, it's going to be, I think staffing and recruiting is a very important place in this next shift, technology shift, because it's going to disrupt so fast and so many white collar jobs, that maybe thought for the last 15 years were kind of the safe jobs. And I think that's where things are going. If you had to give advice, or you were making that decision today, which direction would you point in terms of job types and industries?
Yeah, so when we had started Blue Crew, there was a lot of noise around, hey, why are you working in the light industrial space? All of these warehouses are implementing, robots to run their picking and packing and all of that. And the fact of the matter is you still need people to operate those. You still need people working on the line. And that was 10 years ago. We still see that today. So Classet as a business, ourselves, we had started really within the skilled trades. That was kind of our first niche of plumbers, electricians, and carpenters, kind of everything in between. All the data shows right now that within light industrial, within those skilled trades roles, there is kind of an aging workforce, and there is going to be a more need for people being trained up, people getting into those roles. So I don't see those types of work slowing down anytime soon within that space. But over the last year specifically, and I could guess in the next couple of years, we've also kind of seen the healthcare space pick up a little bit as well. So hard to tell, but we'd be betting on a lot of those kind of manual hands-on roles here.
Yeah, I would say that's a safe bet. I also think there's going to be an entirely new category of white collar work created around AI professionals, people who work, train, prompt, interact with, and adopt these tools, which I think as recruiters in the market, leaders of recruiting teams, being able to bring these into your team in a way that's structured and thoughtful and onboard folks, which I think is kind of one of the things as we've evolved ourselves, and we're all learning this together, right? There is no clear roadmap. It's like, for a certain business, you kind of have a GPS and you know exactly where everything is for businesses that have been around for a while. But with AI, it's almost like a a cryptic treasure map. You think you know where to go, but where X marks the spot is kind of shifting every 3 or 6 months. So one of the areas that I think is still very much in flux for recruiting is compliance and regulation. And how do you approach that, within your voice agent, and how working with partners, and even are you looking at some of the regulatory bodies, and how are they thinking about this at sort of a state and federal level?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's constantly evolving. A lot of this AI within recruiting is new. There's new things being brought up every week here. So there's a couple, state and federal laws that are in place that are starting to monitor this more and more often. Here at Classet, we take a pretty kind of stark view at the decision making process and advancing candidates through the funnel based on what decisions are made. So we feel like a human, to avoid any type of compliance issues or any bias in inductions. We still want a human in the loop for what we do. So within our screenings, it's typically based on start criteria for that role, binary information. Do they have this experience? But when we feel like if we're asking candidates, hey, can you describe this certain time, or what's your biggest strength? Having AI trying to dissect that and score it or rank it could become a little difficult, and you're kind of getting closer to that line of what's going to be compliant here. And I know we've seen a couple recent lawsuits on that matter. So we take we have the goal of just keeping up to speed with all the newest regulations that are out there, making sure that we're compliant. We're testing calls on a daily basis, having a third party call in and try and trick the screener, things like that, to make sure that we're staying compliant.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit bumpy, but I've worked at the intersection of bias and recruiting, and working with several nonprofits and different platforms over the years that would help with this, and was involved in different tests of what is the name of this candidate versus that candidate? How is a resume formatted? I mean, what school did they go to versus not? I mean, there's if you talk on the phone with them and you're like, oh, you went to this high school. Oh, do you know this person? Like, there's all these things that subtly or very obviously bias a human. And I'm wondering if the truth with AI ultimately becomes that it is less bias than human. And I think the way that the technology is developing, and some of the testing we've done, and I'm sure you've done, it has gotten a lot better with hallucinations and other things that I think were deal breakers, a year or 2 years ago. If you can't remember the job seeker's name and you're trying to write a summary and you create a fake name or a fake company in that AI summary, that's a major problem. But that doesn't really happen as much anymore. And I don't know if you have any remarks on that, but I guess my sort of final question here is, like, as you look to what's possible and where the recruiter ends up, as we discussed, like, what are the skills that a human recruiter to work with this? If you had to say, these are the 2 or 3 things that you as a staffing leader, you as a recruiter need to really own over the next 3, 6, 12 months as it relates to AI adoption, what would those be?
Yeah, just a couple, what you just said about bias. I strongly believe that you have the ability to be far less biased utilizing AI within your screening process, because you're giving everybody a fair and consistent opportunity with, consistent scripts and all of that. But going and kind of looking 3 years, 6 years down the road, there's a couple pieces there, both on the recruiter level and then leadership level. I think people really need to, and if you haven't experimented with AI at all at its most basic level, whether that's creating a job description or sending a follow-up email, there's a lot of ways to get used to just the power and see the time savings and figure out where this could fit in. But as a recruiting team, as an agency, having consistent time audits and cost audits of, hey, here's our process right now. Here's where the highest friction points are. Here are where our people are spending the most time. There might not be a tool out for that right now to help streamline it, but I guarantee within the next year and a half, there will be. I know we focus on the top of the funnel mostly, where you can pretty easily identify, hey, we're spending a ton of time, that 60-70%. But as a leader, I think you consistently need to be looking at your process, your workflows, and figuring out, hey, is there a tool out there that can allow my people to do this more efficiently?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that understanding of where you're at, baselining the data, what's your time to place, what's your cost per, acquisition of every placeable candidate, et cetera, is it's sometimes tough to find when you don't have that data under one roof and everything. But this was really, I think, helpful for me as well, as I'm learning along with everyone else who's adopting this technology in this particular sector. If we have some folks in the audience, if any specific questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And as Michelle said, this is going to be recorded. We'll send it out to everyone who RSVP'd and who attended here today. And this is the first in our Smarter Staffing webinar series. We're going to be speaking with a lot of folks just like Johnny, who have a really unique and specific perspective on the use of AI for modern recruiting teams. So, Johnny, this is really great. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you guys having me. Love the work that you guys are doing, and thought this was a great conversation, and hopefully it was able to help out a couple people as they're exploring some of these tools within the market.
Yeah, I think you were, and I really appreciate working with you all as well. Well, it looks like there's no questions left. So, Michelle, thank you so much for. Oh, wait.
Yeah, nick of time. Gentlemen, what's a real interaction? Or I'm sorry, what's a real interaction when you made a human decision that AI never could, or that AI couldn't?
That's a good one. Johnny, do you have any anecdotes on that?
Yeah, I think when you get down after the basic screening, the qualification of candidates, as you work your way further down the funnel, like negotiation is one thing that would come straight to mind. Going back and forth in talking through the candidate's culture fit, the negotiation aspect, all the way up and towards getting them hired and onboarded. If there's any sensitive subjects that come up, I do really feel like humans are able to handle that with in a better way than AI right now. But yeah, just I think there's a lot of examples further down in the funnel, negotiating a placement or a contract or a wage being one of them, that a human is probably better off having that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think further down the funnel, the human conversations that both parties want to have. Hey, this is a job I'm excited about. This is a company I want to consider working for. I'd love to get to know you better and have you explain a bit more about being able to sell your customer, right? And get someone excited about that and get the right person excited about that, right? So, and that's where that screening support helps you get to that right person faster. So, yeah, look, we're really excited. You guys are building a breakthrough technology, and I'm excited to see what you keep releasing. So thanks a lot for taking the time, Johnny, and thank you, Michelle, for organizing. And for the audience, thanks for joining the Engin Smarter Staffing webinar series. We'll have more to come, and they'll be announced via email and LinkedIn. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.